Welcome to Lawyer Boss Life.
Welcome to Lawyer Boss Life, the podcast where law firm owners learn to build profitable businesses and lead lives they love. I'm Alay, law firm growth expert and founder of Law Firm Success Group. I've helped hundreds of attorneys scale their firms, gain freedom, and take back their time.
And I'm Chelsea. I'm a law firm owner, entrepreneur, and toddler mom. I know it's possible to make an excellent income, work 40 hours a week or less, and take time off because that's what I do.
Today, we're talking about one of the hardest but most empowering parts of running a firm, letting go of bad clients. Whether they drain your energy, disrespect your time, or just don't pay, firing a client can protect your business and your sanity. So in this episode, we're going to cover a few things. First off, how to actually recognize when a client is no longer a fit for your practice before it turns into a total mess. And what are the financial and emotional costs of keeping the wrong clients? And then we're going to talk about, how to actually go about doing it, and some of the rewards that follows. So Chelsea, I know that this is something you might have a little bit of experience with. What are some of the things you do, or what are some of the signs that spring out to you when you start to say to yourself, this client may no longer actually be a fit for us?
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially in family law, when you feel like you want to help this person, but they're just not listening, or they have a very specific path that they want to follow. And it's not in their best interest. It's going to cost them a lot of money and not turn out great. It gets really hard to have that push and pull dynamic. So, when I'm kind of assessing like what has changed, right? I have a client and maybe we were working together well before and things have started to shift. Usually these are the couple things I start recognizing. One, they're not listening to any of my advice. They are either thinking that they know the outcome when they have not had any experience in family court and what a judge is going to do. They are taking longer to pay, such that it's stopping work. And then they're also complaining about work not moving forward. And kind of the third one I see is they're just not responding and they're not engaging in their case. Those are the three things I start more often I start to see when relationships with a client are starting to break down for whatever reason. Sometimes it is just me, but these are the signs that as the lawyer, I see from a client most often.
And I know when you're starting your firm especially, it can be really challenging to go ahead and fire a client. Even when you see those signs, you may be tempted to hang on to the client because, it's a client. They're billable hours. You're trying to help them. There's lots of reasons to keep them as a client. And so Chelsea, kind of take us through, your mental journey about figuring out, hey, you know what? I need to keep every client to now where when you recognize the signs, you take action.
Yeah. Thankfully, we've set up our business where I'm often turning away cases. And the value of cases and the emotional toll it'll take on you and the client who's unhappy in some way or not a fit, you really have to look at what matters. So if I have a client and I'm saying like, hey, I think it's time for this client to move on to somebody else. It's just not working. I think there might be a better fit, somebody that can get through to them, or maybe it's just time for them to have a fresh set of eyes in their case to reassure them that maybe what I was doing was the right path. I'm really not scared about replacing that client with one or two other cases. When you have a case that's emotionally draining on you, it's taking twice as much time as it should, which means likely you can take on two cases in place of this one case, because so much of the drain is not necessarily a billable time to the client. When I have a client who's not listening to my advice, who's, should settle the case and it's just not going forward in the way that I think makes sense for them, or they're making the case more difficult, it's costing them a lot of money, I'm talking about it with my colleagues, my business partner, my staff. I'm thinking about it at night. It's taking up space. where it shouldn't, that I'm also not billing for. So usually it's pretty clear right away that sending this client to another lawyer that might be a better fit for them and getting it off of my books usually opens up space for two cases, not just one. So, yes, I'm 7 years into my practice and I'm very comfortable with that. Early on, when we did take a little bit more of the cases, whether it was a difficult client or not, I can tell you, even when I tried to keep that case, it usually had a way of being the wrong decision, even if I lost the case and had to kind of scramble to fill those blocks. Because again, I'm drained, my team is drained. Sometimes my husband is drained when these clients are really taking that emotional toll. So no matter what stage I was in, shifting that client, and I want to say, getting rid of or firing that client, but shifting that client to another situation usually is best for everybody involved.
Yeah, and to your point, it's so much easier to do that when you have a steady stream of prospective clients
Yeah.
coming your way. It's much harder to do that when you're just starting in your practice, isn't it?
Yes. It is harder. And sometimes it's just about the risk reward. So when you take on these clients and you're like, oh, I don't, I don't have a full book of clients. So if I lose this one, some of that billable time is a little scary to make up. But the risk is also high. When you have a client who's not heeding your
Mm.
advice, who's taking a drain, the risk of them not paying the bill that you're billing them for is high, because now they're dissatisfied and they'll come up with any reason not to pay you and put the blame on you, because that's just the reality of our job. Something that now I have a little thicker skin with, right? But so what is the reason becomes, well, it's harder. I don't want to lose the billables, but if they're not paying, you're not really losing, right? If any, or you're not really gaining from those billable hours if they're not going to pay it anyway. And then you have to go hunt them down. Even though I've done that where I've said, oh, I don't want to lose this case, and it's a good billable case if they're paying. And if they are paying, okay, then it's a different conversation. But the facts specific to why you want to transition this client to somebody else, if it's payment, that's an easy one. No matter what stage you're in, get that client off your books and move on to somebody else, because it's going to take more of your time. And the likelihood that they're, not going to pay can be higher, especially if they become dissatisfied. But if they're paying and they're just battling you and it's just draining your energy, that's where I've definitely noticed that it's harder, because as lawyers, we want to fix the problem and you want to get it across to this client like, oh, I want to be the one to settle their case. I want to be the one to help them because they are pushing back on me, and if I can get them a good result, then I know they're really going to be happy. And then again, it's some clients are just not going to be happy. That is just the way that they are, especially in family law. Even if you get them a good result that on paper looks like an excellent deal, they're going to find some way to not be happy about it. And that's the narrative that I would give a lot of new starting lawyers is, I get it. I've been there. I know it's hard, but the risk reward analysis you have to have with yourself is, I think the time is better spent on getting a more quality client, even if it might cost you a month of billables before you get there. But that's just me.
Well, it's not just you. That is exactly how it works. One of the first clients I started working with was a solo attorney, and he'd built a pretty good reputation in the community. He'd been practicing for like over 20 years. And I was actually surprised when he reached out because I was thinking, man, this is not someone who I would think would be interested in business coaching, because he's already, been there and done that and built a very successful practice. And when we started talking, he said that, I have these three ideal clients. Most of the time our clients have one or two. He had three. And there was this one kind of client that was about 40% of his practice. So it was a good piece of his practice. He was getting a lot of money from it. But to your point, Chelsea, it was such an energy drain for him that it was bogging down not only his work with those clients, but his work with other clients. It
Yep.
was impacting his business development. So it was very hard for him to go out and effectively, generate business because he felt terrible all the time. And so he actually we made together, but it was his decision. he decided that he was going to go ahead and drop those clients. And once he did that, his business took off. He was getting better clients because he was feeling better about himself. He was
Mhm.
feeling like he had good energy, so better clients were signing up with him. He built a full book of business, and he actually, I mentioned he practicing for a long time. He wanted a very specific objective. He wanted to retire somewhere else. So he was able to build up enough money, go ahead and buy that retirement home. In a year, he was retired. And it was all because he fired that group of clients that was making his life miserable. So, Chelsea, what's the process that you use to kind of disengage from a client, or as you said, to refer them to other counsel?
Yeah, it's usually going to be over the course of a couple conversations with a client where you kind of start planting the seed so that the transition feels right for everybody. And it doesn't always go as well, right, as you hope, but if you can communicate early with the client and establish at least the trust that you want them taken care of, it goes a little bit better. So this is kind of what it looks like for me most often is got a client, we've maybe been battling a little bit, and usually there's a comment about, well, I don't agree or I want to do this way. And I have to remind them, you hired me for a reason. You didn't hire a lawyer for a reason, but you hired me for a reason. My advice is this because of X, Y, and Z based on the conversations we've had. If you'd like to talk to another lawyer to run this by them to see if they have any other thoughts, I highly encourage it. And I can give you several names of colleagues of mine that you can reach out to. And maybe they end up having a different set of suggestions that might better accomplish your goal. You kind of frame it as I have a great idea that might do us both a little bit of good to either one, validate your position or reassure you that what I'm saying is the best course of action. So I usually do that once in that way. And then if they say, no, 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 I trust you. This feels like common sense. And I have to remind them the law is not common sense. And you kind of walk them through, what that looks like. And sometimes that one conversation is enough to kind of get them back on track and get them back on your side and get the relationship going. Sometimes that's where they start thinking, maybe if I'm not getting my way or things aren't going the way that I see them, I should talk to somebody else. And so that's kind of the example of the relationship's not great, but it's not so broken down that it can't be repaired. But sometimes it's enough just to, make it go one way or the other. Other
Yeah.
times, oh, sorry. There's
No, no, I was just going to jump on board with that because oftentimes we have these clients who have worked with other attorneys sometimes or other professional service
Mhm.
providers, and they're used to treating them a certain way. And so if they're treating you that way, sometimes kind of a readjustment of their attitude or recalibration of their attitude, which sounds like you're giving them, Chelsea, could really kind of have them go, oh man, I got to treat this person differently. And they change.
Yeah, and I have had a lot of success that way, and it's not about kind of tricking them into it, right? It's just framing it that that's the truth. If they don't trust me enough to take the advice, then that is okay. It's not about me most of the time. They need somebody that however they communicate with them, the lawyer communicates with the client isn't, it's very specific. Everybody communicates a little bit differently. And so another lawyer might be able to get the same point across in a way that the client can actually understand. And that's better for the client. I'm okay with that. You have to be okay with that. So sometimes it's just a suggestion and it either goes one way or the other. It either brings that relationship back or they actually do pursue another lawyer and then ultimately it's the right fit. The next shift I was going to go to is when the relationship's starting to get bad.
Hmm.
And of course we can have a conversation about just non-payment because that's a totally different dynamic. It's a little bit easier to deal in that regard. But I'm just talking about the relationship, the firing of a client or the transitioning of a client to somebody else when the relationship's just not going well, is when they're questioning you but also blaming you. When you start seeing a lot of blame language and we should have done this, I feel like we're not doing enough. A lot of that that language from a client can be really a big red flag, because if something doesn't end up going their way in one area, then you can start hearing things like, I'm not going to pay for that, or that seemed like a waste of time. It didn't work. I don't know why we're doing this. That can quickly transition to, I'm going to contact the state bar, or you did this wrong, or I Googled this. All of these things that can be very triggering and lead to a total breakdown, where it's like, nope, once somebody says that they're going to report me to the state bar, which is surprisingly happens a lot, or refuse to pay, that's a hard no for our firm as a policy. No, we can't work together anymore. You crossed a line. You can go pursue whatever you think you can pursue outside of that. That's again a little bit easier, when things are really, really bad, versus a client that's just draining, and you got to get back on track, because once you get to the point of actually going in front of a judge and litigating something, the second one thing goes wrong, they are going to place that blame on you and make things very difficult, including non-payment. And then you have this like endless kind of trickling effect of post case stress that you will continue to have even after you get subbed out by this client or you fire this client, right? So doing it early when the signs start showing is important.
And what I like about this approach that you're suggesting for the clients that are sort of on the fence is there's no real danger about a bad review being left. Now, that's one of the concerns a lot of attorneys have these days, is if you fire a client, they're going to go, not only will they report you to the state bar, but they'll also leave you a bad review. And sometimes those reports on the state bar are easier to deal with than a bad review on Yelp or
Yeah.
Google or what have you. And so there's a lot of concern about that. But with your approach, a lot of that goes away, because now the client's not looking at it as, oh, they were really mean to me and they kicked me out of their firm and all this other stuff. They're thinking, oh, okay, it really is about fit, and they're helping me find the best fit for me to address my case. So I don't think they could really hold that against you too much.
That's the hope, right? I mean, I have conversations with people all the time that I instantly know I'm not going to vibe with. And they're entitled to feel and approach the case the way that they want to. Whether I think it's reasonable or not is not for me to decide. It's not my life, especially in divorce. It's very emotional. And I think there is an attorney for everyone. I'm not for everyone. And so getting them to the right person, even if I think, it's going to cost them more, it's going to take them longer, that's not for me to decide. It's the client's choice. And so I always think it's a better situation when the client ends up with an attorney that's a better fit for them.
All right, Chelsea, quick tips. How to address this issue when a client is not paying their bill.
Early on, I mean, get on top of it. So we do an evergreen retainer system here. So client always have to have a positive balance in their account. It helps offset those bigger bills and keep ahead of things. But sometimes that goes negative, and it's just the reality of the situation. We have a process that's very specific, where we give notice, but we also have the clients opt into an auto charge. They can opt into it in our fee agreement. That makes it easy for the clients that do. We issue a bill. If they don't pay within 7 days, we just bill their card. But we don't require that, because we feel like, sometimes people want to manage their finances a little bit differently. So we don't require it. But if they don't, our intake coordinator, who's manages all of our trust and operations, sends them an email, sends them a text message, and reminds them. And then the attorney reminds the client, hey, we can't keep working on your case. We need to do payment immediately. If you need to discuss payment options, contact Erin. If you don't contact her, we need to talk about transitioning you out. And we stay firm with it. Now, I say we stay firm with it, but we all know we make exceptions, and I always regret it when I do. But we're not unwilling to work with clients. It's the clients who don't communicate that usually it gets a little bit more difficult. But we try to give the client as many opportunities to communicate with us about what's going on financially, come up with a plan, and we can be flexible. But the more that you stick to your policies and make it consistent, the more likely and the bigger benefits our firm has seen is that the client will take it seriously. Because if you waver, make exceptions time and time again, they don't take you seriously.
So when dealing with these clients, whether it's a payment issue or just a mutual respect, and here's how you work with an attorney issue, you kind of have to put on your big girl or big boy pants and just deal with it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. We can't help everyone. This is the business. Now we do pro bono hours and we do, reduced fee when we can for the cases, but it's a business and not everyone can afford us. Not everyone can afford a lawyer. We get that. But this is how I make a living, how I support my family. And the more exceptions you make, it's going to start eating away at you, and it makes the work more daunting and draining, and then no one benefits from it. So staying consistent with your policies and knowing your worth with a client and communicating early is going to save you a lot of grief.
And lawyers are phenomenal people. A lot of them kind of wear their misery like a badge of honor, like I'm dealing with all these terrible stuff and terrible clients and lots of work hours and stuff. And I can deal with it. But I want to encourage you all, it's okay to be happy. It's totally fine to have clients in your practice who you love. Exactly what Chelsea has built into her practice, because she's had the courage and the wisdom to know when a client is not a good fit for her and to have a conversation and to move that client to someone else who's a better fit. So the bottom line is, you don't have to tolerate clients who don't respect your practice. If you do tolerate clients who don't respect your practice, a lot of it is because you don't respect your practice. So get on board with that. You're worth it. Your practice is worth it. And quite frankly, it's in the best interest of your clients as well. Make sure you're working with clients who you enjoy working with. And to learn how to build a firm that attracts those right clients and maybe repels the wrong ones, visit lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. If this helped you reclaim your boundaries, forward it along to someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.